Chapter 35, Friday, 9:45 p.m., wrapping up. Later, having done the hardest thing in my life twice, I sat at the kitchen island, eating pizza, and working on what I hated more than anything in the world, building a spreadsheet. At least the pizza didn't come frozen, but from a place across the river. It wasn't as good as in New York City, but better than anything I'd found in St. Louis. It also helped ease the pain of building a workbook of my financial situation, and the prescription on the oxy I filled while I was out said to take it with food. I worked and ate sideways because I sat on one stool while resting my snake-bitten leg on another. I wasn't ready to move to the kitchen table, and the 20-person dining room table was completely out of the question. Instead of beer, I drank Coke from a quart-sized plastic glass, which meant I was still on the wagon as far as I was concerned. The hardest thing I ever did was drive past at least 6 liquor stores, several bars, and more restaurants than I could count, to get the supplies needed for Tom's project downstairs. I kept going, even as beer called out to me in a dozen languages. 2 hours later, I had to go out for a heavy-duty stapler and pass all those places again. I left everything in the hallway for Tom to haul down into rat hell, where the temperature started dropping as soon as Richard stopped living. Half frozen, I now sat in the kitchen worrying about money for the first time in my life, even though I had a roof over my head and food to eat. When I set the limit for the vampire realtor on the purchase price, I thought I was dying. Still, I had left enough for contingencies, a nice chunk for Larry, payoffs for the lawyers, property taxes for 5 years, and even income tax. The idea had been to make life miserable for the Cottonwood HOA, not be a land baron. The smart thing to do was screw the IRS, give Larry Adeline's house, get a face job, and start a new life. I had been getting the things Tom needed when Larry and Riley came by the house with my passport. At the time, I thought I was sticking with the plan to get a face repair after Tom took care of Richard, so everything I owned was in the back seat of the truck. Riley and Larry had walked in, looked at the empty kitchen, and discussed what to do with the passport. Finally, Riley set it on the island, gave it a little pat as if saying goodbye, and they left. I thought I saw Larry wipe his eyes before putting on his sunglasses. The useless passport sat where she left it. It was good for 10 years. Based on my spreadsheet, I wasn't going to be able to afford a face fix for at least 20. I decided to stay. I had moved past the whys. What would I do? Do I want to constantly look over my shoulder? Only I could make sure Adeline got a fair share for her part of the golf course. I'd parcel out Adeline's house to Larry and, with luck, have a neighbor to share a beer with once I was ready. The South will rise again bullshit the HOA had going needed to be shoved up some asses. I remembered Adeline's anger at the HOA and agreed with her. I was fed up with the Dragnas, Nurse Ratchets, and Gibaldis winning because they held the cards. I told myself I wasn't going to get even. As far as I was concerned, I'd done okay. One thing I was sure of, I wouldn't need to look for trouble because it had my address. At that moment, my problem was no longer what or why, but how. My task was to decide on a price for the deceased Richard. When he was alive, Richard constantly pounded home that price depends entirely on what it is worth to the buyer, not what it cost us. I made one last pass editing the video of Richard's final confession, his final act, that he made to an empty room. The scene where he made an offer to the devil Gibaldi to hand over another devil, Dragna. I looked frame by frame to ensure I hadn't inadvertently stepped into the camera's view. After making sure that no part of me could be seen and deleting the few comments I had made, I said, "Your turn." Then I tersely repeated, "Your turn." "Oh, sorry, were you talking? You ignored me for over a week and now I'm supposed to act like we're talking again? Damn it, Tom, give it a rest. We've been around people since the morning after Kaufman. Look what happened when you started talking in front of Richard." Tom was being an ass. It wasn't my fault he could talk to me in my head while I had to use my voice. As Larry would say, it was what it was. What I didn't want to be was the guy walking around talking to himself. "Yeah, as I remember, Paul, you were the one who said do it while the guy was right in front of you. You have to admit that was kind of cold. Then you ran. You know I hate rats. So I get to do all the work, salt him down, wrap him up like a fucking mummy. Oh, and the best part, haul him up the fucking stairs. If you'd told me about that part, I would have dragged him out to the garage before coating him in 50 fucking pounds of salt and lowering him down into that coal bin. which killed my back. Tom, can we focus on what we need to do right now? Again, your turn. That's it? Your turn? You're doing me a favor? I sighed and said, no, this is your part. Sure, my part. Tom Horn is the bad guy. I don't like doing it any more than you, you know. Both of us know this wasn't business. It was personal. Yeah, it was personal. So what? Richard was not a serial murdering sociopath protected by the legal system. I remember the mission statement. If we came across guys like Kaufman while hunting Nicky, the guy you claimed shot us, we would, in your words, take the fuckers off the board. It was your idea to make money on it. What were we going to spend the money on? We were supposed to be dying. Now that we need the money, you're bitching, I retorted. Hey, buddy, I'm bitching because I only get control of things when I do the hard, scary, shitty parts. Even then, I don't get to talk. I have to type because the mouth is off fucking limits. We've talked about this. Hi, I'm Tom Horn. No, not the one Steve McQueen played. Don't you know who that is? Never mind, before your time. Oh, yes, I know I look exactly like Paul Harding. I'm his twin, yeah, right down to the scars. It's the kind of thing most people don't like to talk about, like the psycho nuns they had in grade school. Oh, yeah, we also have the same stain on the shirt from the queso dip. It's a little runny, but damn good for coming out of a jar, don't you think? Tom snorted angrily and said, real funny, asshole. I'm talking about after we get the face fixed, which was supposed to be the next thing we're doing, remember? We were going back to the hospital to get a new face, then off to a beach somewhere with more money than we could spend in our lifetimes. That was the plan. Then for no reason, you decide, fuck it, spend all the money, and head downstairs to shoot it out with a professional killer. We're damn lucky it wasn't Nicky. We should take a lesson from that guy. I seriously doubt he keeps his victims in his basement. He damn sure wouldn't do all that shit in a freezing basement. My toes have fucking frostbite. Tom, Gibaldi and his boys know about the room, but not the coal chute. I know you think we could have buried him in the sand bunker out back on our fairway. We'd still be digging when the members started their early morning tee-offs. I'm sure if you let him play through, the club members wouldn't say a thing. We mulled it over for a long time. Tom quietly said, come on, man, I did the best I could. And I felt that I was going to puke the whole time. Kaufman was horrible, but at least you didn't know him. I sighed. He had a point, and shit like this bothered him. It's okay, Tom. I do appreciate what you did. Part of the problem is that I'm strung out from having to go out twice and pass all those damn liquor stores. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I think not stopping was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Hey, buddy, I'm proud of you. If I'd been driving, we'd have beer in the fridge. 6 days, man, I said. No, 7, going on 8. I have a lot of alone time, but I'm not the one with the problem. That was a cheap shot. Fair, but cheap. Tom had a good point. I had promised him a life of his own from time to time. I smiled to myself and said, look, just because we now have loads of money doesn't mean we can't use a little for the face. It could get a little complicated, but we can work it out. Maybe we can get more than we thought for this job. The keyboard is all yours. Thanks. We'll figure it out, Tom replied, and I heard the hope in his voice. I let him take over the keyboard. It was past 3 in the morning when Dragna answered. Mr. Horn, I wondered when you would call. Of course, I had heard the voice 1,000 times, from his conference calls to FBI surveillance. As always, I was surprised at its normalcy. I wasn't surprised he sounded awake. A lot of his business involved people on the other side of the world. Hello, Mr. Dragna. Thank you for answering so promptly. I know it's late, Tom replied, his voice deep, sounding of dusty cattle and impending lung cancer. I was pretty proud of that voice as I watched the words scroll across the screen. Proceed, Horn. The fingers flew. Very well. Do you have access to a computer? Yes. Horn gave him a website to log into and a one-time password. After the password, you'll have 10 minutes, no more, and don't even think about recording. I'll be monitoring, Horn said. 12 long minutes later, Dragna said, I thought your specialty was WITSEC. I've expanded into preemptive services, Horn drawled. He says he had proof. Did he? Yes. Where is it now? Horn text sighed. Something few keyboard voice generators can do. Mr. Dragna, you and I both know whatever is in the cloud can be in many places, and there is not a damn thing you can do about it. So, you have also expanded into blackmail. Tom took over the keyboard and our fingers flew. I bought you time. How much? I don't know. I do know that he stopped talking several hours ago. You are asking me to pay for a hit, Dragna snarled. No, that could make you an accessory after the fact. Richard Lake never had a chance to give them his evidence. I guarantee they will not get it from me if you pay me. You are being blackmailed, and you are not an accessory. I nodded with satisfaction because Tom and I were finally on the same page. How much? Then I watched our fingers type, 1 million. What the fuck? I typed, retaking control without thinking. Horn, what the hell? Dragna barked. I agree. What the fuck? You said it was my turn and you fucking typed it, Tom said in my head. I never said you could decide the price, I said out loud. Horn, what the hell is going on? Dragna demanded. I'm taking over, I said, and began typing. I knocked over my coffee, I muttered. Another unique feature of my keyboard voice. I don't mutter, Tom yelled in my head as Dragna said. That's too much. Will you shut up? I yelled, and then stared at the text message window. Tom and I breathed a mutual sigh of relief. I had not typed the words. Dragna was silent. Take your fingers off the keyboard. Dragna will sense you aren't me, Horn said quietly. I took my fingers off the keyboard and whispered, He doesn't know you or me. Yeah, well, how much time have you spent getting into the character of a hitman? Tom asked. Good point. It's all yours, I said. It's too much for Lake and his so-called evidence. We're talking about evidence from a guy who says he faked data for me and then faked his death. Give me a break, Dragna said over our conversation. I don't negotiate, Horn replied in a calm voice. You expanded your business. I suggest you expand your business strategy, Dragna replied. Horn cut him off. Considering what is at risk for you, I could suggest the same thing. There was a long silence, and I regretted turning control over to Tom. He was going to push too hard and blow it. Mr. Horn, you sound like you think you know something about me. Mr. Dragna, it's my business to know about you. Is that right, Mr. Horn? Knowing what you know about people, did you believe Richard Lake? Because I knew Richard Lake. I liked Richard Lake, and I trusted him. Did you believe him? Why not? Horn replied in a flat, hard voice, his fingers flying to answer in the right tone. Mr. Horn, Richard Lake claimed that I was being closely watched by federal agents, probably the FBI. Here is a fact. The FBI only watches me when I am in the company of friends who the FBI believes are involved in various aspects of organized crime. Now, my friends associate with a wide range of people in business, politics, sports, and entertainment. I, for some reason, have been singled out as a money launderer. Richard claimed I deliberately created an illusion. You're saying that's not true? Horn said. No, I'm saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I do or don't launder money, or if I have some reason to make them think I do. What matters, Mr. Horn, is that there is no point in surveilling money launderers. Money laundering, like your business, is highly specialized. The professionals do not get involved in drugs, human trafficking, loan sharking, robbery, or murder for hire. They stay in their lane. Mr. Dragna, will you please get to the point? You just missed it. The people in the Justice Department responsible for catching money launderers are auditors who sit at computers all day. They don't sit in vans outside restaurants to watch me eat. What would be the fucking point? So, why were they there? Horn replied as though bored. Mr. Horn, take my advice. Stay in your lane. They weren't there, or if they were, it was not to watch me because, as I explained, tailing a professional money launderer is a waste of time. Yes, I do enjoy shows, but I hate musicals. I wasn't fucking there, Mr. Horn. As for Nicky, that is not his kind of place. He prefers blue-collar places. When he goes to a nice restaurant, he doesn't dress up in a black t-shirt with a silk sports coat. He shows up in a tailored suit, orders a good wine, but never wears a hat of any kind. You're saying Richard Lake lied? Horn asked. No, that's not what I'm saying. Lake, like you, Mr. Horn, was a specialist. He didn't know what he didn't know. Why do the feds think Craig Nicky shot Paul and Gabriella Harding? Because that is what an eyewitness told them. Horn text snorted and said, Well, I suppose Harding would know. Well, not exactly, I said. Dragna spoke over me. Not him, you idiot. That guy is a complete nutjob. A drunk. Not even Gibaldi would put him on the stand. Keep off the fucking keyboard, Horn screamed at me. I gave the fingers back to him. Not him, his wife, Gabriella. What? Horn and I typed. Dragna sighed. That's right. Richard Lake was a sales genius and he could make his way around computer systems, but he was not in your business. He not only shot his accomplices, he left them both alive. Like most people, he had never seen anyone shot. Gabriella Harding is alive? I typed. Yes, the bullet went through her without hitting bone or organs. Why would she tell the cops Nikki did it? Dragna sighed and said, because, like Lake, she didn't know what she didn't know. Both of them were counting on it being handled as a mugging, but Harding was a guy with security clearances, an expert in his field, not some tourist. I have no idea what they were thinking. As soon as she figured out the cops would start asking questions and digging, she remembered she had brains. She said it was Nikki. Why Nikki? Tom replied. He didn't have to tell me to stay out of it. It was all I could do to watch the screen and listen to Dragna's neutral voice telling me that my world had been upside down. It was the smart move. Gabriella realized the FBI might get involved and connect her to Nikki and me, but I don't think that was why she did it, Dragna replied. Okay, why did she do it? Tom asked. She did it for Richard to buy him time. She'd do anything for that guy. So she tells the cops that her husband, Paul, worked for me and laid everything on him. Since he was dead, he couldn't contradict her story. She got into WITSEC and gave Lake a fighting chance to stay out of prison. I have to hand it to her, she did it all from a hospital bed. That was why she was never able to get Richard a message. Both ended up thinking the other was dead. Took her a long time to get over that. Mr. Dragna, how do you know all of this? She told me. When? A few months ago. She was finally getting over Richard and the pandemic was easing up. She called me. Mr. Horn, you are not the only one who knows how to conduct secure calls. Although my guy says this phone you sent is pretty damn impressive. Maybe someday you can tell me where you get these. I'd be happy to. Why did Gabriella call you? Horn texted, using a friendly tone of voice I could never have managed, especially by that point. Dragna sighed. She's blackmailing me. Why else do you think I would tell you all this? I have someone in WITSEC I need taken care of. Let's cut the bullshit. Cover our ass on the phone. Shit. My guys are scanning this to make sure we aren't being monitored. We're past that, Horn. I'll give you $300,000 for Lake, 7 more for Gabriella Horn. What makes her worth so much? Horn asked. Craig Nicky. She is all they need to convict him and put him away for life. If they ever find him, which they are not going to do. You want him back. Mr. Horn, I need him back. Leave Paul Harding the fuck alone. Why? Isn't he saying Nikki shot him too? Dragna's voice lost some of its smoothness. Yeah, he is, and they believe him because Gabriella had told them he's dirty. How in the hell do you think he even got into WITSEC? Harding was dying and they were going through the hoops so that Gabriella's husband had protection just in case. Then he supposedly died. That's what they told everyone, including Gabriella. Maybe Harding can help their case. That's a problem for another day. You are going to make sure she doesn't testify, because if she can't, they will never risk putting the fucktard on the stand. I looked out into the hallway leading to the dungeon stairs. A lifetime ago, I eavesdropped on someone I considered a friend. I remembered what he had said when Riley told him he didn't know me. It stuck with me, because, at the time, I thought it explained our friendship. Larry had said, maybe not for what I did, but I sure as hell do for what I know. I thought he'd been talking about Nikki. Now, I knew Larry had been talking about my wife, Gabriella. Tom and Dragna were talking, and I forced myself to ignore the rage of betrayal and listen. Mr. Horn, you never know. Maybe Paul Harding is no longer some kind of straight arrow. The guy had serious chops in IT security at one time. Mr. Dragna, I have to ask, since finding a witness buried as deep as her will involve a lot of work and time, why not pay her off? Another long silence as Dragna considered answering. You're right, Mr. Horn. I could pay her off, except that she wants an extraordinary amount of money. And right at this moment, I have a small cash flow problem. You mentioned time, so I'll suggest another alternative. What would that be? Sell me the video I watched. That will clear Nikki. I'll give you $1 million for that in addition to the $300 for Lake. There is no fucking way we can give him the video, I said to Tom. Yeah, and he fucking knows it. But he thinks the feds have it. And that somehow I still managed to take Lake off the board, Tom replied in my head, and thankfully not on the keyboard. He thinks you must be a dirty agent. Mr. Horn, are you still there? Dragna asked. I think you know the video is not for sale, Horn replied in a hard, don't fuck with me voice. Yes, and I think we both know you can find Gabriella. You might even know where they're keeping her. All you have to do is tell me where, and I'll take care of the rest. This could be the beginning of a very profitable relationship, Mr. Horn. Yes, it could, Mr. Dragna. I'll be in touch, Horn replied and hit the key to disconnect. Fuck me, I need a beer, he said so quietly that I had trouble hearing it, which was weird. Yeah, me too, I whispered, because unlike Tom, I had to say the words for him to hear. Okay, well, we now know that you're crazy, he said with a chuckle. How's that? Hey, you're the one who has seen and talked to a ghost who won't answer. That fucking bitch. I say we find her. We can do it. The only reason we couldn't find Nikki was because the bastard was never in WITSEC. Hey, what's with the flashlight? Just where the hell are we going?